My father does not pay more attention to me than he does to my stepsister, and it's all because she came into his life at a very vulnerable time when his new wife passed away in an accident, which was my stepmom, and yeah, she had a stepdaughter. So my dad just evolved his whole world, and it revolves around her now. Well, get this. I broke my leg. It was an accident, but now I'm laying in a cold hospital bed, and my father can't even show up because he's too busy talking to my stepsister. Well, you know what? I decided, you know what, Dad? We can play this game. I'm gonna tell Grandma all about this, and we know how much Grandma controls you, don't we? You know those moments when you're lying in a hospital bed, staring at the blank white ceiling and wondering how your life got so messed up? Yeah, I'm right in the middle of that. Maybe it's the pain meds kicking in, or maybe it's the fact that my father, who I thought would be here when I needed him the most, decides to abandon me for what, the millionth time? But it's not just the broken leg or the hospital room that's bothering me. The thing is that I still can't believe that I'm lying helpless and alone here, while my dad is just busy playing a father to my stupid stepsister Stacy. Let me give you guys a bit of a context. See, my name is Denise. I'm 21, a college student, and currently trying to figure out how I'm supposed to make it through the mess. First, let me tell you guys how I actually landed in this situation. I didn't see the car coming when I crossed the street last week. One minute I was walking home from class, and the next thing I knew I was on the ground with my leg twisted in ways it should not be going. It wasn't even my fault at all, and some guy ran a red light, and now I'm stuck in the hospital, trying to deal with not just the physical pain, but everything else that's got me absolutely falling apart. After the incident, the first person I thought to call was my dad. I wasn't asking for much, just for him to come down to the hospital, to be here for me, maybe give me some moral support since I was feeling pretty dang helpless. But when I called him, I got the same lousy excuse that I've been getting for some time now, about how he was ditching me for his favorite daughter, Stacy. He tells me that he would not be able to come since he was leaving with Stacy the next day for the mental peace retreat that he had already paid half the money for. You would think that Stacy, being full 23-year-old adult, would be fine on her own, but no. My dad said that he promised her that he would accompany her on the retreat, and she really needed him around. As to how she would just handle everything alone, yeah, his stepdaughter needed him, but his real daughter, who just broke her darn leg, should be on, fine? On her own? You'd think his words, his always prioritizing Stacy over me, would hurt me less with time. But it doesn't. It's like every time I reach out, hoping that maybe this time he'll prioritize me, he ends up choosing Stacy, Stacy, Stacy. Well, the worst part is, I could really use his help right now, not just emotionally, but financially. Hospital bills aren't exactly cheap, and as a college student, my savings aren't much to write home about. So I swallowed my pride and asked him if he could help me out with the money just to cover the hospital expenses. Can you guess what he said? He told me how he had only had enough money to pay for the travel and the remaining of the retreat fees. He also pointed to me how this retreat was really important for Stacy's mental peace, and that I should understand that my sister needed this money more. Yeah, here we go again with Stacy's mental health. Let me tell you a bit about it since we're on the topic, yeah? Stacy has been faking anxiety attacks since the day that she stepped into our lives. It's her favorite trick in the book to get anything out just to manipulate Dad into doing whatever she wants. Every time I try to talk to him about something important, she conveniently breaks down and Dad rushes to her aid like she's the center of the universe. It's infuriating, and now, instead of being here when I actually need him, he's off playing hero again. It's disgusting. I guess I should have seen it coming. Dad's been this way ever since he married my stepmom, Claudia. I still remember when everything was different before my mom got sick. Here's a little backstory for you guys to understand the dynamic of my family better and the reason why it hurts so darn much right now. So, my parents had an arranged marriage set up by my grandma, Jean, who's basically the matriarch of the family. Dad never really loved Mom, not in the way a husband should love a wife anyways. He just went along with the marriage because he didn't want to make Grandma mad. She's rich, and Dad's been living off her money for years. He's never had a real job and has just been coasting through life on the allowance that she gives him. Classic, right? Everything changed when Mom got sick. Dad was hardly around, and when he was distant. It wasn't long before he started seeing Claudia behind Mom's back. She was already pregnant by the time my mother passed away, and it still stings knowing that while my mom was fighting for her life, he was out starting a new relationship with someone else. Dad did not even wait to get married to Claudia, as just a month after Mom's death he signed the papers. Right there in the court, making it official. But the universe has a cruel way of balancing things. I guess Claudia's pregnancy was complicated and both she and the baby passed away during childbirth, leaving Dad with Stacy, her daughter from a previous relationship. That's when it all went downhill for me. It was like Stacy became his new purpose in life, his chance at redemption, and he poured everything into her, acting like she was the fragile little bird who needed constant attention and care. Meanwhile, I was left to fend for myself like I did not even exist in this world. Stacy also played the victim, crying about her anxiety when things don't go her way. And Dad buys it every single time. I've tried to talk to him about it, but he shuts me down, saying I'm being too harsh and that I don't understand what Stacy's been through. The truth is, I don't care what she's been through. All I know is that ever since she came into our lives, I've been pushed to the side like a toy that nobody wants. And every time I tried to speak up, Stacy finds a way to twist the situation, making herself look like the one who's suffering. Even Grandma, Grammy Jean, can't stand Stacy. She never approved of Dad marrying my stepmom in the first place, but when Mom died, she tolerated it for Dad's mental sake. But Stacy, Grams, has never liked her, mostly because Stacy's not blood, and she sees right through her manipulation. Grandma's tried to talk to Dad about it, just to remind him that I'm his real daughter. But he doesn't listen. He's too wrapped up playing savior to Miss Stacy to notice how much he's hurting me. And now, lying here in this cold hospital bed, I can't help but feel I'm nothing more than all alone. My leg's in a cast and I've got bills piling up, and I can't even rely on my own darn father to be there for me. How did I get to this point? I simply try not to think about the accident too much, but it's hard not to. I've always been independent, always tried to handle things on my own, but this is different. I need help. And it sucks knowing that the one person who's supposed to be there for me isn't. I've got friends, sure, but they've got their own lives, their own problems. And what's worse is knowing that my savings are going to run out soon. I've been paying for my college and living expenses on my own since I didn't want to rely on Dad's money, especially not when it comes from Graham. But now with hospital bills stacking up, I don't know how I'm gonna manage. I've already used most of my savings to cover the initial cost, but I'm going to need more, and fast. Guys, please, I don't know what to do. I don't. And, this is what brings me here. The hospital bills are not gonna go away, and neither is this feeling of being completely abandoned by the man who is supposed to be having my back. I don't know what to do next. All I know is that my savings are dwindling, and if I don't figure out ways to pay for all this, I'm going to be in a lot more trouble than just the broken leg. I am starting to not understand how I should go about handling it at this point. I don't know. I'm so lost. I'm going to turn to you guys for advice. What should I do next? I could really use some suggestions right now, so maybe please drop a comment down below. That'd be cool. Update number 1. Hey guys, well, it's Denise and I'm here again. So, it's been 5 days since my initial post, and I'm just happy to tell you guys that things have somewhat improved. I didn't think I'd be able to get through it on my own, but it turns out I didn't have to. After reading all your comments and suggestions, I decided to do something that I had not initially considered. I asked my aunt for a bit of help. Yeah, I know. She's my dad's sister, and though we're not super close, I figured she might understand the situation better than anyone. When I reached out to her, I wasn't expecting much. My aunt is a nonsense type of woman, and I thought she would just give me a lecture about being independent or something, I don't know. But to my surprise, she was actually willing to help. I explained everything to her, from the accident to how my dad ditched me for Stacy, and she immediately asked how much money I needed to cover the bill. I was so relieved. I didn't even expect her to be so open about it, but I should have known better. She was always more supportive than my father ever was. What I didn't expect, though, was grandmother stepping in. I thought my aunt would help me out, and that would be the end of it, but apparently word gets back to Grandma Jean. And when she found out what's going on, she was furious. She practically stormed into the hospital the next day, talking about how my dad was an embarrassment and how she wasn't going to let him get away with this. She immediately settled the bill without a second thought and told me to focus on my recovery and said that she would take care of the rest. I'm not gonna lie, having my grandma come in and handle everything was a huge weight off my shoulders. I didn't even realize how much stress I've been carrying around until it was lifted. It's not just about the money, it's about the finally feeling like someone in my family has my back. My dad may have chosen to run off with Stacy for some sort of stupid betrayal, at some sort of stupid retreat, but at least my grandma still sees me as her granddaughter, as someone worth fighting for. Right now, I'm focusing on my recovery. The physical pain is still there, but it's manageable. I'm trying to just take things slow, day by day, even. And for the first time in a long time, I don't feel completely alone in all this. Grams has been coming to see me every day, bringing me food platters, and making sure the nurses are on top of nursing. It's been comforting in a way I didn't expect. But there's a storm up brewing. Gram is angry. She hasn't said it outright, but I can see it in the eyes, the way she talks about my father. She's been muttering under her breath about how he's useless and how he's throwing his life away by catering to Stacy's whims. And honestly, I don't know what's going to happen when Dad gets back from the retreat. Grandma's the one who controls the family money, and I can't help but think she's going to take action. She's never liked Stacy or the way my dad's treated me, since Claudia came into the picture. Now that Stacy's manipulation is affecting more than just me, it feels like Grandma's had enough. I'm not sure what comes next. Part of me is worried about the fallout when Dad returns and has to face Grandma's wrath. But another part of me feels a little hopeful. Like maybe, just maybe, this is a wake-up call that he needs. Maybe he'll realize that he's been doing this all these years. How he's been neglecting me while chasing after Stacy's fake crisis. And either way, I know one thing is for certain. I'm not going to sit around and wait for him to change. I have my own life to focus on, and with Grandma and Aunt stepping in, I finally feel like I have a support system I can rely on. So for now, I'm just going to take it easy, focus on healing, and see how things unfold when my dad comes back. I'll keep you guys updated on whatever happens. Update number 2. Hey everyone, it's me again. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and a lot has happened, though not in the way I expected. After everything that went down, I knew I could not stay at my dad's house anymore. Not that he ever even noticed that I was gone. It wasn't like I was waiting for him to come back from the ridiculous retreat with Stacy and suddenly care about what's going on in my life. So, when Grandma suggested I move in with her, I didn't hesitate. The day I was discharged from the hospital, Grandma came to pick me up. She didn't just take me home, though. She had already arranged for my stuff to be picked up and moved back to her place while I was still recovering in the hospital. I didn't even have to lift a finger. It was like she had planned it all out, knowing full well that my father would not bother checking in on me. And you know what? He hasn't. It's been a full week since he and Stacy got back from the retreat, and I haven't received so much as a text asking where I am or how I'm doing. It's like I've disappeared from his life completely, and he doesn't even care. I'll admit, at first it hurt. I guess a part of me was still holding on to some hope that maybe, just maybe, when he got back and found out I wasn't at home, he would start to worry. But as the days passed, it became pretty evident that I was wrong. He's so wrapped up in Stacy and her endless mental crisis that he has not even noticed that I'm gone. Honestly, I'm starting to feel more indifferent about it. What does it say about him as a father if he can't be bothered to notice his own daughter is no longer living under his roof? As for Grandma, her rage has only gotten worse. She's been holding back, probably for more of my sake, but I can sense it clearly in the way that she talks about father, and how she did not raise him to be such a useless man. She's been muttering things about how he's lost his marbles, and how Stacy has him completely under her thumb. I can't blame her. I mean, how could I, when I feel the exact same way? But Grandma, she's not the type to let things slide. She's planning to confront my father, and I know it's not going to be pretty. Living with Grandma has been different in a very good way. I finally feel like I'm in a place where I'm not constantly competing for attention or fighting to be seen. It's peaceful here, and even though I'm still recovering, I feel more at ease than I ever did in my dad's house. Grandma's been incredibly supportive, making sure I have everything that I need, and even helping me to get back on my feet financially. It's like she's trying to make up for all the years my dad neglected me, and while it doesn't ease the pain, it does help. Guys, right now I'm just trying to focus on moving forward. I've decided to go ahead and just take some time off from college to fully recover. Physically and mentally, it's not an easy decision, but it feels like the right one. I need to figure out what I want for my life, separate from the chaos of my dad and Stacy, and with Grandma by my side, I finally feel like I have the space to do that. I'll keep you guys posted on what happens next. Update number 3. Hey guys. So, I know, a lot of you have been waiting to see how the confrontation went. Well, sorry to make you guys wait this long. It's been about a month since my last update, and as you might have guessed it, things have taken a sharp. I've been trying to process everything that's happened, and it's still a little surreal, but I'll just lay it all out there. So remember how I mentioned that Grandma was planning to confront my dad? Well, she didn't waste any time, and the very next day after my last update, she called him over to the house. It was intense to say the least, as my grandma did not want a second before calling my dad out of his irresponsible behavior. And as soon as he started, Dad, being the person he's become, immediately went off the defensive mode. He tried to justify his actions, saying that he was doing what he thought was right by prioritizing Stacy because of her fragile mental health. He even had the nerve to suggest that I was partly to blame for the accident because, according to him, I'd been careless. Well, that stung. I mean, here I was, barely out of the hospital, recovering from injuries that could have been far worse, and my own father was twisting the narrative to make it seem like I was somehow brought this onto myself. It was a new low even for him. But Grandma wasn't having any of it. She gave him an ultimatum to either choose his real family, me, or his stepdaughter. It was one of those moments that he could have chose either way, but my dad, in all his stubbornness and just straight up delusion, he laughed. He called the whole thing silly and walked out acting like it was some kind of joke. I think that's when reality hit him, how far he had gone. I mean, the man I once called Dad was so deep in Stacy's manipulation that he could not even see the reality in front of him. For a while, after the confrontation, things were strange. Grandma was waiting for Dad to finally realize what was on the line, but he didn't budge. He didn't reach out, did not try to make amends. I mean, he did nothing. He just carried on with his life, oblivious to how close he was to losing everything. We still waited, thinking to give him, one last chance, but nothing changed. Finally, after what felt like weeks of silence, Grandma made her decision. She disowned him, and she didn't just stop there. She kicked him out of the house, and see, what my dad had conveniently forgotten was that the house had been, it's not his, the one he's living in. It was Graham's. She owned it, and she had every right to kick him out. So she made it clear that he and Stacy were no longer welcome, and he seemed shocked, like he didn't actually believe she would go through with it, but she did. Well, what happened next? Dad came back to Grandma's house later that day, absolutely begging her to reconsider, and he swore up and down he would change and promise he'd be a better father. But by then it was too late. She told him to get lost and scram, and warned him that if he shows his face around us again, she would call the law. It sounds harsh, but after everything that's happened, it seemed fair. I thought that would be the end of it, but Dad did not give up. A few days later, he shows up at my college, of all places. I don't know how he found where I was, but he did. He must have been desperate. I was leaving class when I saw him standing by the entrance looking disheveled and pitiful. He tried to stop me, begging for another chance, saying that he would lose everything. It was uncomfortable and honestly, a little terrifying. I didn't know what to do at first, but I knew I could not let him drag me back into his mess. Thankfully, campus security stepped in before this could escalate, and after that, Graham and I decided to take action. Legally, we got a restraining order against him. It wasn't easy to do to my own father, but it felt like the only way to protect myself from further harassment. I don't want to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering when he might show up again, trying to manipulate me back into his life. I mean, what do you think? What would you have done? I can't help it. He's hopping from shelter to shelter now and lives on the street. He's his own fault.